Hey everyone, welcome back to Extra Rise English Podcast, the show that helps you level up your English one real conversation at a time. I am Mia.
And I am Leo. So glad you were here.
Okay, two stories. One is embarrassing and one is painful, and they are both mine. Story one. I once gave a colleague feedback on a presentation draft. I said, "This is really solid. I think the structure could maybe be a little tighter in the middle section, but overall, I love the direction." She said thank you, made no changes, and submitted it. I found out later she thought I loved it. Story 2. A manager once told me in a review that my work had been reactive instead of strategic. I spent the rest of the afternoon unable to hear anything else he said. The feedback was probably right. I don't know. I was not able to receive it.
Two failure modes, and they are more common than most people realize.
And I have been on both sides of both of them, giving feedback so softly that the message disappears, and receiving feedback so bluntly that the shame took over before the content could land. And today we're talking about what to say in both situations. This is the episode.
Feedback is one of the most important professional skills there is, and it's also one of the least taught. Most people learn how to do their job. Very few people learn how to tell someone else how they are doing theirs in a way that actually helps, or how to receive that information without it becoming about their worth as a person.
And for a lot of Southeast Asian learners, there's an extra layer because in many of our home cultures, direct criticism is coded as disrespect. You do not tell someone their work is wrong in front of others. You do not point out a flaw directly. You soften it. You suggest it. You let the person discover it themselves if possible. That instinct is kind, but it does not translate cleanly into English professional feedback.
It does not, and we're going to talk about why and what to do instead. This is segment 1.
Leo, let us start with the compliment sandwich because I think that's what I was doing with my colleague. Compliment, soft criticism, compliment, and it did not work.
The compliment sandwich is one of the most widely taught feedback frameworks in workplace training, and it's also one of the least effective. Here's why. When you lead with a compliment and follow with a criticism and close with a compliment, the listener hears the pattern. They know the criticism is coming, and so the first compliment gets discounted. She said something nice, but the real message is next. And the closing compliment gets discounted too. She had to end positively. What remains is the criticism, isolated and unframed, surrounded by noise that was supposed to help it land softly and actually just made it harder to find.
So the compliment sandwich was supposed to protect the person receiving the feedback, and it accidentally made the feedback invisible.
Exactly. The person you were giving feedback to was not protected. She was confused. She heard the word solid and filed the whole conversation under positive. The middle part, the part that was actually the message, did not register as the message.
And the opposite failure, receiving feedback so bluntly that the shame takes over, what happens there?
What happens is that the feedback triggers what psychologists call a threat response. When someone tells us our work is not good or our approach was wrong, the brain processes it similarly to a physical threat. The part of the brain that handles logic and nuance goes offline. You stop hearing the content of the feedback. You start defending against it, not because you're difficult, because you're human.
And this is worse if you already feel like you're being assessed. As an immigrant, as a student, as someone whose first language isn't English, the feedback is not just about the work. It can feel like a verdict on whether you belong here.
That's real. And knowing that's happening is not the same as being able to stop it. But there are phrases that slow the process down, that give you a way to receive the information before your nervous system decides what it means.
Oh, so the goal is not to not feel the sting. The goal is to buy yourself a second before the sting decides how you respond.
That's exactly it. And there are also phrases that let you give feedback directly without triggering that response in the other person, not by softening the message into invisibility, by framing it as forward motion instead of judgment.
Which is what the compliment sandwich was trying to do but couldn't.
Right. Let's talk about what does work. This is segment 2.
3 phrases, one for giving feedback without triggering defensiveness, one for receiving feedback without shutting down, and one that works in both directions. And if this episode is the one that's been missing from your professional English toolkit, subscribe to Extra Rise right now. A new episode like this one every single week.
Phrase 1. One thing that would make this even stronger is, this is your giving feedback phrase, and it works because of what it does grammatically. Even stronger assumes the work is already good. You're not saying it's bad and needs to be fixed. You're saying it has value, and here's how to build on that value. The listener hears this is a forward move, not a correction. They don't have to defend the existing work. They can receive the suggestion without feeling like their judgment is being called out.
Compare that to, the problem with the middle section is that it's unclear. Both sentences are pointing at the same thing, but one of them says, you made a mistake, and one of them says, here's the next step, and the person receiving it hears those two things very differently.
You can also follow it with a specific suggestion. One thing that would make this even stronger is tightening the middle section. The argument in the second paragraph is solid, and if it moved directly into the conclusion, the whole piece would land cleaner. Notice you're not saying the middle is a mess. You're saying here's the piece that's working, and here's how to let it work better.
One thing that would make this even stronger is, say that phrase out loud right now. Notice how different it feels in your mouth than the problem is. It points forward instead of backward.
Phrase 2. Can I ask what your thinking was behind that? This is your receiving feedback phrase, and it's powerful for a specific reason. When someone gives you feedback that stings, the natural response is to explain yourself, to defend the choice, to say, the reason I did it that way was... But that response closes the conversation. It signals that you're not available to hear the feedback. You're available to argue against it. Can I ask what your thinking was behind that does the opposite. It opens the conversation. It signals that you're not shutting down, you're trying to understand. And practically, it often reveals that the feedback was about something different than what you heard. Your manager said reactive instead of strategic. You heard you're not good enough. What she might have meant was you're responding to tasks as they come instead of anticipating them. That's a specific and actionable thing, but you couldn't hear it because you were already defending.
So the phrase buys you the second you need before the sting takes over.
It does, and it gives you information. You can't respond usefully to feedback you haven't fully understood. This phrase helps you understand it before you decide what it means about you.
Say it out loud. Can I ask what your thinking was behind that? Notice it's calm. It's not defensive. It's curious.
Phrase 3. I want to make sure I'm understanding this correctly. This phrase works in both directions. When giving feedback, you use it to check that your message landed the way you intended. I want to make sure I am understanding this correctly. I think what I'm trying to say is that the argument in the second paragraph could be the anchor for the whole piece. Does that make sense? It turns feedback into a dialogue instead of a verdict. When receiving feedback, you use it to slow down and confirm before you respond. I want to make sure I am understanding this correctly. When you say reactive, do you mean the way I approach my weekly planning or more about how I handled the situation last month? This signals that you are engaged, not shut down, and it gives the feedback giver a chance to clarify, which often makes the message kinder and more useful.
And it takes the pressure off both people. The person giving feedback does not have to feel like they dropped a bomb and walked away. The person receiving it does not have to figure out what to do with a statement that might mean 5 different things.
Feedback is a conversation. These 3 phrases help it stay one.
This is segment 3. Let's drill all 3. 3 situations. Leo models the phrase. Say it out loud with him. Ready?
Ready.
Scenario 1. A teammate sends you a draft report. The content is good, but the structure is confusing. The executive summary is buried at the end, and the main findings are hard to find. You want to give useful feedback without making her feel like she did it wrong. Say the feedback.
One thing that would make this even stronger is moving the executive summary to the top. The findings in Section 3 are really clear, and if a reader hit those first, the rest of the report would click into place immediately. The content is solid, it's really just about where the reader enters it.
Say it out loud. One thing that would make this even stronger is moving the executive summary to the top. Notice what that feedback does not say. It does not say, the structure is confusing. It does not say, this is hard to read. It says, here's a specific move that makes the strong work even stronger, and here's why. She can receive that. It's not a judgment on her judgment. It's a next step.
And the last sentence, it's really just about where the reader enters it, gives her a frame for why the change matters. Feedback with a reason attached is more likely to be acted on than feedback that's just a direction.
Scenario 2. You're in a one-on-one with your manager. She says, I think you need to be more proactive in how you communicate with the team. You feel stung. It feels personal. It feels like she's saying you're bad at your job. Instead of going silent or defending yourself, say the phrase that keeps the conversation open.
Can I ask what your thinking was behind that? I want to make sure I understand what you're seeing specifically because I want to address the right thing.
Say it out loud. Can I ask what your thinking was behind that? I want to make sure I understand what you're seeing specifically. You did not defend. You did not go silent. You asked a question, and that question will almost always produce a more specific answer than the original feedback. I've noticed that when there are delays, the team finds out at the last minute instead of having a heads up. Now you have something you can work with. More proactive is a judgment. Earlier heads up on delays is an action. The phrase moved the conversation from verdict to information.
And notice the second part of what I just said, because I want to address the right thing. That signals that you're not pushing back, you're trying to respond well. That tells your manager, I received this, I'm taking it seriously.
Scenario 3. You're giving feedback to a junior colleague in front of 2 other team members. He just presented an idea in a team meeting. The idea has promise, but the proposal skipped a critical step that would make it unworkable in practice. You need to say something, but you don't want to embarrass him. Say the feedback in a way that serves him and keeps the room safe.
I want to make sure I am understanding this correctly because I think there's something here worth developing. The core idea is strong. I want to flag one piece of the implementation that I think we need to work through before we can move forward. Can we take a few minutes after this to think through the rollout plan together?
Say it out loud. The core idea is strong. I want to flag one piece of the implementation. Can we take a few minutes after this to work through it together? What just happened there? The feedback didn't happen in front of the room. It was redirected to a private conversation. Can we take a few minutes after this, protected him from having to defend or correct himself in public? The core idea is strong was not a compliment sandwich. It was a true statement followed by a specific, limited concern. And I want to flag one piece signals that you're not dismantling the whole proposal. You're naming one thing. In front of other people, that precision matters. It's the difference between feedback that helps someone grow and feedback that makes them afraid to speak in the next meeting.
Feedback in front of others carries extra weight. The audience isn't just the person receiving it. Everyone in the room is learning what happens when someone takes a risk and gets something slightly wrong. Make the lesson a safe one.
Go back and say all 3 responses out loud: the colleague draft, the manager meeting, the team presentation. Say them until the phrases feel like your own words, because you'll be in all 3 of these situations at some point, and now you'll have something to say. Here's your one thing from today. Before your next piece of feedback, either giving or receiving, ask yourself one question. Is this a verdict or a direction? Verdicts close conversations. Directions open them. One thing that would make this even stronger is a direction. Can I ask what your thinking was turns a verdict into a direction. And I want to make sure I understanding this correctly keeps the conversation open long enough for the feedback to become something useful.
And for those of you who have been receiving feedback in a language that's not your first and feeling the sting more sharply because of it, the sting doesn't mean the feedback is right, and it doesn't mean it's wrong. It just means you're human. Give yourself the second. Ask the question. Understand before you decide what it means.
Your assignment for this week. The next time you need to give feedback to someone, use one thing that would make this even stronger instead of your usual phrase. Come back to the comments and tell us how it landed. We want to know if the room shifted.
We genuinely do.
And if today gave you words for something that has felt wordless in your professional life, share this episode with someone who's also navigating feedback in their second language, because this one matters.
And if you want more of this every single week, subscribe. We'll be here.
All right, thank you so much for being here on Extra Rise English Podcast. And remember,
Because one serving of English is never enough.
see you in the next episode.